Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy you're here. This Zoom was born from a piece I wrote from the Bayou Brief when the Alito draft on Roe v. Wade first leaked back in May. And I wanted to give people a roadmap for what to do when we got to this day where Roe was actually overturned. We're recording this Zoom so that we'll be able to put it inside that article on the Bayou Brief. So you'll be able to revisit it and watch parts of it that you might want to see again or share it with other folks. So we hope that you'll do that. You'll be hearing three pieces of the puzzle that I wrote about in the articles titled A Fight Worth Having. But we're talking today to people who are experts on some of the things in the article, and I thought it would be better to hear from them than me on those pieces of the puzzle. So you'll have Dion Haywood, the executive director of Women with a Vision, Louisiana State Representative Mandy Landry, and myself, and we'll all take a different piece of the puzzle to speak to you about. Now, I've invited folks who'll give you real talk, no bullshit, an honest assessment of the urgency of the situation we're in, but they'll also give you constructive ways to be useful and actions to take that'll be really impactful. I want to impress upon you that we're in a moment of constitutional crisis where individual freedoms, personal privacy, human rights, and democracy hang in the balance. But I also want you to understand that talk about giving up on Louisiana is not an option. We have to fight for our home state, and that involves building power here, which is a long-term project. But with the current makeup of our state elected bodies, it also involves making sure we have protections at a national level for the people in our communities. And that's particularly urgent right now. We've been able to count on those protections in the past, and that's no longer the case. We're here specifically to talk about the unsurprising but still shocking overturn of Roe. However, knowing previous decisions that used Roe as precedent, and based on their writings on this decision, the extremists on the court have already signaled interest in going after same-sex marriage, same-sex relationships, and contraception. They've also already done further damage by neutering our Miranda rights, greenlighting warrantless searches within 100 miles of any US border. That's where most of our populations live. Overriding state gun laws, removing the separation of church and state, superseding indigenous laws with state laws, making it illegal for the EPA to regulate emissions. And on the next Supreme Court docket, we know that there are some cases that will allow them to continue this awful trend on voter protection and climate issues and more. All that said, I want to assure you that if we act now, there's an opening for hope and an opportunity for wins. In 2016, Trump told us very clearly that if he was elected, he would appoint 2 to 3 anti-abortion Supreme Court justices that would throw abortion rights back to the states. Many of us worked really hard to stop this from happening by working to defeat Trump, and many of us mobilized quickly when we lost that battle. As tragic as many of us understood that 2016 loss to be, our numbers have grown since then. In 2018, more voters turned out than in any midterm election since the demise of the big political machines about 100 years ago. And we saved democracy by taking back the House of Representatives. That gave us some leverage to stop some of the worst of what Trump and then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell were doing. Then in 2020, in addition to keeping the House majority, we took back the White House with Joe Biden getting more votes than any president in history. Then flipping those 2 Georgia Senate seats in January of 2021, that gave us an evenly divided Senate with votes being tipped our way through Vice President Kamala Harris. Each of these victories has shown what we're capable of and saved us from going into a total authoritarian government. And that's not hyperbole. We've seen the lasting damage from the Trump presidency recently, as we've seen the theocratic tendencies of the Supreme Court, a third of whose judges are his appointees. So in 2022, our mission is to do what it takes to start the process of turning around that broken branch of government. Academics who study authoritarianism, fascism, and dictatorships are telling us that the time to act is now. If we do not get this right this year, our job becomes that much harder. We are in a code red situation, and we're here to talk tonight about what can be done right now in 2022 to protect the rights of those in our community and to save our democracy. Deon Haywood is the Executive Director of Women with a Vision. For more than 25 years, Deon has worked as a human rights defender and advocate for Black women, working class and low-income women, and LGBTQ communities in the Deep South. Deon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I want to apologize. I've been doing a lot of talking in the last week, so my voice is a little scratchy, but forgive me.
Okay, well, we're just very happy to have you here. And I wanted to ask you the question of how do people support abortion rights and abortion justice groups in Louisiana right now?
Right now. Okay, so one, I'm glad that everybody wants to jump in. I would think that those of us who do reproductive health and reproductive justice work in the state of Louisiana would appreciate resources. And when I say resources, donations, but also the other way you can support is, you know how we have that saying, education starts at home? It's time to no longer have these conversations with just the people you think you can have them with. It's time to talk to each other. It's time to start in your home, start in your community. And I've been saying to people, a lot of people can't seem to wrap their head around the whole idea of abortion. But as you laid out when you started our conversation, we're not just talking about abortion anymore. We're talking intersectionality. We're talking all of our rights are kind of laying on the line. What I would like people to not do, let me start with the not do. Please don't send Women with a Vision or any other org that's doing this work right now messages about purchasing abortion pills, Plan B, taking people for rides. It's not safe for us, and it's not safe for you. And as much as we want to talk about like an underground railroad, first we need to map out some things with lawyers because it's just not safe. And Jeff Landry has told us that he will seek us out. The state police has said that they will use every bit of surveillance they have to do so. And this is when I want to help people understand the idea of criminalization. It's not just, I get you and you go to jail. It's a long-term strategy. We saw this before. The right has used this strategy before in the war on drugs. If many of you could think about what the 90s was like for the war on drugs, we saw things like entire communities, and mainly communities of color, completely decimated. And two ways that Black men were removed from the community, and women, but mainly Black men, was either by death or prison. It is my fear and my experience that this is what we're going to see. It's going to be that kind of hunt again. And so before we jump in and we've gotten messages through Instagram, we've had people stop by our office. We want people to help, but there are ways to do it without all of us putting each other at risk. And for Women with a Vision, people may remember or not, but we've had an arson attack before. And so we know firsthand that the other side doesn't play fair. And we're not always talking about politicians. We're talking about the people that follow this ideology that they share. And so the first thing is pick one of us, pick all of us and support. It can be $10, $20, whatever you can do, because then it supports the work that we do. And also for those of us who distribute Plan B, like Women with a Vision and REJAC, it allows us to be able to continue to do that while we can, to support people with the resources that they need to be healthy and well. So that's the first place you can start. But the other place is, if you are a person that understands what's happening in this moment, or you're willing to learn what's happening in this moment, please teach people in your community. Reach out and say, hey, what do you think about what's happening? What can we do? And what can we do? You talked about it. Midterms are going to be important, but we can't just vote for people. I want foot on neck. I want my foot and your foot. our hands around Democrats' necks. It's time for y'all to put your neck out for us, like we do for y'all every time we show up and vote. And that's what we do. And so I'll just leave it at that. But
Well,
we have to be safe in this moment as well.
so you've got a good one sheet that addresses the criminalization you're talking about. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we have historically looked at in our history is how people are criminalized, right? So many people know that Women with a Vision, we've had a long history working with sex workers. We have a long history working with drug users. And we've seen just the in and out of prison, that people go in and out of jail. It's a cycle for people. And so we don't want to see that happen. We also don't want to see where moms and pregnant people end up losing their kids or end up in jail, because then it just creates this whole kind of dynamics again of breaking up of family and community. And we've seen what that looks like throughout Louisiana, not just New Orleans, but throughout Louisiana. We know what incarceration does to our communities. And so because of that, and seeing, some people may have seen it, but we've seen language like level 3 felony, level 2 felony. That's normally, you hear that when people are talking about drug offenses, and that's normally 20 years or more. And so we want to make sure that we don't have that kind of thing happening again. And we've seen the other side say, well, we'll adopt all the children when the women go to jail. Well, we're not going to let you do that, because we're going to ensure that women don't go to jail. And so just making sure that we stay on top of the criminalization piece, even helping women understand what not to do, right? For example, we've had calls at the office where people are asking about bleach, ingesting bleach or turpentine and sugar. And if you're from the South, I feel like many people have heard of these things, but we don't want anybody to take anything that could have them end up in the emergency room or worse, or death, right? And so we know that these are all the things that were laid out, and we would just like not to see any of the level of criminalization that we know can happen for people. And we don't want to get CPS involved where they're removing children. And all of these things have happened and continue to happen with the war on drugs. And so, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I've seen your social media posts where you're asking people not to stockpile emergency contraceptions. Why are you saying that?
Because we think, we know that Louisiana lacks when it comes to sex education, sexual health education. And so many people think Plan B is birth control, and it's not. So we have been really educating, working with people to understand that. And we want to give you enough to hold just in case, but we don't want you to stockpile them when there may be other people that have a greater need. And this is why donating to RH organizations, reproductive health and justice organizations, donating is so important at this moment, because this moment is going to be different. People are a little freaked out, and they have a right to be, but we want to make sure that everybody can get what they need and everybody has a good supply, and we don't run out and somebody is sitting at home with like a pack of 30 when we have people that may need just one pack.
Okay. And you, I know that y'all have been planning for this day for a really long time. You were very,
a really long time.
This was coming. So for some of us who have not been in this work for the number of decades that you have, we don't know exactly what all your plans are. And we hear a lot of women talking now about wanting to help drive people to where they need their abortion, or to help give them room to live in, if that's something they need, sort of an underground railroad of some sort that people are volunteering to participate in. And I'd like for you to kind of speak to, and we know, by the way, that Louisiana women will have the farthest road to travel.
Absolutely.
Of any other state. It's 1,300-mile round trip to get to the closest abortion clinic and back. But can you talk a little bit about what's really needed there, why people wanting to do these drives and offer their homes is maybe not the best choice for women in need, and what the better option is.
Right. So as much as I understand that people want to help, but you laid it out. I mean, we have new rules around border police and 100 miles in. And if you've ever been, my wife has locks. And just driving to Texas, we hate going to Texas because she's always stopped. They always assume that she's a male because of her hair, and it's all they see from the back. So for people of color and Black people and queer people, being on a road is not always easy. It's not always the easiest ride to take, and it's just not safe. If you have a situation, if you think about the number of women who are involved in the criminal justice system who may be on probation, parole, or house arrest, they're not going on any rides, because they can't be gone. And they can't go and ask permission to leave for the reason they would be leaving. If you have a job where you're being paid hourly, or you have kids, there's so many pieces to the puzzle when you think about who's going to watch the kids. How are you going to be away from work? Will you be paid if you're off from work? And many people, we know what Louisiana is like, and with the type of jobs we have here. If you work in hospitality and tourism, you're not going to be paid for being off for 3 days to travel somewhere and travel back, because it's going to take about that long. And so we're asking people to not do that, to try to donate to, I have the list here, to the Bridget Alliance. They're a national practical support org that can support people. Now you can't reach out to them, but you can reach out to other people, and they will help connect you. I just think it's best if the orgs do the connecting, because we know who to talk to. Right. And for example, just since the leak, since the leak came out, we've had visitors to our office, young white women coming in the office saying, "Oh, I wanted to come and talk to you about abortion." We've never had that happen. So we didn't trust it. Or people who send, like I said, different messages. I just don't think it's safe for us. And for those of us who do this work, we need to be on the ground doing this work for all of us throughout Louisiana. So just call us, reach out to us. If I think donations is the best for now. I think many of us are coming up with plans moving forward. This is the time, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, Black people and people of color have always lived and accept that we have intersectional lives. It's housing, it's economics, it's healthcare, it's abortion, it's the criminal justice system. It's never one thing. And so this time we're going to have to ask allies to understand that it's not just this moment. And even though you want to do this, it's not safe for any of us, because we're all going to be surveilled. And we even see that with the period trackers, and begging these companies not to give out people's information, but we know we can't trust that. And so I think just for the safety of all of us, I'm sure somebody will get us out of jail at some point, but it's just not safe for any of us. And your resources, instead of driving your gas, we can give that to people, give those resources to people who know how to do it, and get people out and get people back safely. So that's the kind of investment I would ask people to make.
And I think you're also looking to guarantee the dignity and safety and privacy of the women who need these services, which means that you're wanting them to go specifically to people who already are involved.
Yes. And most of us who do reproductive health and justice, most people know who we are. And so the communities trust all of us for different reasons, and we want them to have that. We want them to have that safety. And I can speak personally for Black women, even going to the doctor is fearful, because you just don't trust what's going to happen. It's why, we wait so long, and we have proof that we not historically cannot trust the healthcare system. And so it's best for people to really allow the people who do the work to be the people to connect the people.
If folks want to ask questions of Dion, you can put it in the chat. I've already got one here. Do you anticipate that Plan B will definitely become illegal in this state?
I don't think it's going to be immediate because we haven't gotten there yet. I'm hoping it won't. And I'll just simply say this. We are committed to making sure that people get what they need. And again, but we want to do that safely. So when you say go away, I don't think it will totally go away, but we need to make sure everybody understands what even pharmacies right now are afraid to order more because they're afraid of what might happen to them for independent pharmacies, right? And we've seen even the larger chains are being cautious. So we're going to make sure we make that commitment that people will get what they need, but we would rather talk to the individual.
So for folks who are asking, yes, we're going to send up follow-up information by email to you. We'll also have it on the Bayou Brief page where this article is, so that you'll be able to have all the resources we're talking about here for future use. And we definitely want to make sure that folks have a way to access. Dion, I did want to bring up the Women with a Vision website for folks to see, so they know that they can go there and connect with y'all there. And are people seeing that now? Just want to make sure. Are people seeing your website?
I can see it.
Okay. So this is the Women with a Vision website. You can get on the email list. You can donate. I personally donate $10 a month to Women with a Vision, and it's a real easy.
Thank you, Linda.
Of course, it's set up through my PayPal, so I don't have to do anything with it. It just automatically comes out through my PayPal, and they've got some great information that I really encourage you to go look through. One other thing that I was going to share is, let's see. Is that a one sheet now on the screen?
Yeah.
This is the one sheet that I mentioned that Women with a Vision has on the intersectional approach to abortion justice. And it talks about what criminalization policies do to our communities. We can make sure that you have access to this in our follow-up. Additionally, I wanted to share the website on the Bridget Alliance that Dion mentioned. Talks about getting people to abortion care. These are the services they offer. So that might be a good organization to connect to. Okay, for those without financial resources, what other actions might they be able to take, Dion, that would be strategic and useful?
So one of the things we are looking at building out, so one of our strategies is street outreach and being in community, educating people. But we probably won't start that till August. Don't know how many people we can take on, but as many people who aren't afraid to engage people in community and just really help them understand like this full moment that we're in, right? That yes, it's abortion, but it's also access to contraceptives. Right now, we still have those things, and we want people to get to look at what long-term contraceptives could look like for them. One of the things that we're thinking about having like volunteer support is family plan. The idea of family planning has not historically been a healthy thing for Black women historically, but we at Women with a Vision really want to talk about reclaiming the idea of when I will and how I will. As many ways as we can, given the situation we're living under. And so that's making sure that we have access. So we're referring people to Planned Parenthood, we're referring people to Crescent Care, and talking to other providers in the city about if we can use them as a referral to get people long-term contraceptives. So if there are people who want to be trained and looking to volunteer, we're probably going to start that up in August. So just reach out to us and we can see, because we want everybody to engage people in this moment, because it's going to take all of us. I know I keep saying that, but it's real. We just cannot afford to live in the silos that we have been living under. And I, like you, as difficult as this moment is, I've not seen this many people want to engage in a very, very long time. So that makes me excited about what we can do in the future.
And so Dion, maybe one of the best things folks can do, and again, we'll send this information out, but sign up for your email list.
Yes.
And that would be a really great way to connect with you so they can continue to get information from you. And when those volunteer opportunities crop up, they'll be the first to know.
Yeah, because we're going to do a training. We want to bring doctors in, some local OBGYNs to come in and talk. We're going to have lawyers to come in and talk. And so we will be planning a volunteer session for people. So we will make that available for people and they can register for it.
Great. Well, Dion, thank you so much again for that information. It's really great to be able to hear from you. And you mentioned lawyers, so we'll go ahead and pivot to the lawyer. So next up we have Representative Mandy Landry, who is a champion for progressive issues, representing 91st House District in the legislature. She is also a lawyer who has represented an abortion clinic and women seeking abortions. Mandy, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Zoom. Oops, had a little issue. There you go. You're unmuted.
Hey everyone.
Thank you so much. Just like to start by asking you, I specifically asked you on to talk about what's possible at the state level through legislative actions, and because you are also a lawyer who has worked on abortion issues, to tell us what's possible with legal actions.
Yep. So, hey everyone, I am State Rep Mandy Landry, District 91 in New Orleans. Probably most of y'all know me. I see a ton of familiar faces on here, which is really good. And I am one of your very few pro-choice legislators, and I'm really fortunate to represent the district and the city I represent, because I can be pretty loud about it in a way that other people can't. But as Linda said, I started out here in this world as a lawyer. Ellie Schilling, who a lot of y'all know, one of the founders of Lift Louisiana, I used to work with her, and I represented Lift with her, and I represented several minors in judicial bypass cases, one as recently as last week. So I've kind of been around this for a minute, and then went to the legislature and realized what a clown show it is sometimes when it comes to passing laws. First, that makes sense, but also laws that we would like to pass more laws that aren't harmful to our own people, but unfortunately many of them are. But let me get to Linda's two questions. So what's possible at the legislature? What's going on? And that is intimately involved with the legal situation right now. So the day Roe came out, as you know, Louisiana had a trigger ban and has a new trigger ban we passed this year by Senator Katrina Jackson. And so Roe came out, and those bans had a very clear mechanism about that abortion be banned if Roe was overturned. So they closed that day, and then Monday morning, Ellie and some other attorneys went down to CDC in New Orleans and filed a request for a TRO, temporary restraining order, and they got it. And I was surprised. Everyone was kind of surprised because it was a Hail Mary. I'm sure definitely Andre, no relation to me, was also surprised. And what they did, it's legally correct. So I think their argument will win out, but politics will get involved. But what they said was that because we have multiple trigger bans now, so the latest one did not supersede the older one, and it specifically said it doesn't supersede. I don't know why. So because they have multiple trigger bans, they have conflicting provisions. So in particular for doctors and clinics, you don't really know what the law is, what the penalty is, when does it kick in. They're poorly written laws. Let's just put it that way. And they said that this violates the clinics and the doctors' state constitutional right to due process, because you can't be held in violation of a law if the state doesn't tell you what the law is or isn't clear about how you're going to violate it. At least that's what it's not supposed to do. So they got the TRO from Judge Robin Jeruso. And that means the clinics are now open. All 3 clinics in the state are open now. We are still advising people, if you're a new patient and need an appointment, you might want to make an appointment out of state. You can go to Pensacola right now. Florida is expected to close their clinics soon, but they got a reprieve recently. So there's several clinics in Florida, and Pensacola is the closest. And I think one of my judicial bypass from a few weeks ago decided to go to Florida. So that's open, but they're open right now. There's a hearing Friday for a permanent injunction, which would indefinitely essentially kick out the trigger bans and the clinics would stay open. If that happens, I think that the legislature will call itself back into a special session. So a lot of y'all are familiar with the legislature and some of the special sessions we've had. Some are necessary, like when we were shut down for COVID and we had to do the budget, so we came back. Some are completely nuts, like when the Republicans wanted to strip the governor of his executive powers and the COVID emergency. This they would do in a second. They would call us back and pass a new trigger ban, and probably this one would be more legally clear cut, I guess, and have input from actual lawyers and not from Right to Life. Right to Life writes all these bills. And it was the governor's office directly who said to me that they're the ones running the show in all these meetings and in everything that happens. They have extreme power. So I think even if we get the injunction this Friday, that we'll have a special legislative session probably sooner rather than later. Even if that doesn't happen, we go in April and they might clean it up then. I do think whether we go into special session this year or in our regular session next year, I think that there is room for a rape and incest exception. I think that now that Roe has been overturned, this stuff isn't theoretical anymore. I think a lot of my colleagues, even though only one of them or 2 of them voted for a rape and incest exception, now that it's real, I think they might, only about 20% of people from Louisiana, and thanks Lamar for sending me that poll, support an abortion prohibition with no rape and incest exceptions. So I think we could do something like that and maybe expand on life of the mother and expand on a physician's discretion. That's a major issue right now, is doctors are freaked out, understandably. They don't want to go to jail, but they also don't want to kill their patient by waiting too long. They're responsible for mother and baby, and their obligation is to their patient to make sure that mom makes it through, or that parent makes it through. And they're freaked out that they might have to let their patient get all the way on death's door before they can do something, because that's kind of what the law says. So I think that whether it's this year or next year, we'll get some more clarity on those issues. I'm really hoping, and a lot of us are starting to work on, we need more sex education. We have an abstinence-only based sex ed in this state. It's easily opt out. We have the second highest teen pregnancy rate. They don't know, the youngest ones don't know really how they got pregnant. They don't understand how fertile they are. They don't really know what happens when you get your period. For the little kids, if they don't know the names of their body parts, they can't report abuse. If they don't know good touch and bad touch and that sort of thing, they can't report abuse. So I think, as bad as all this is, that's going to open the door to some more of those conversations so that we can work on some of those numbers. But that's what I think that's gonna happen at a legislative level, and a lot is dependent. The when is dependent on this lawsuit. And Jeff Landry did file some briefs that I'm reading now, straight to the state Supreme Court for expedited relief. I mean, his office is, I don't know, they're not the best lawyers in my opinion, so I don't know what'll happen with that. But it's still up in the air. I've been pretty good about trying to update people on what's going on. Always happy to answer questions. And Linda, if you want to lead me into my next topic or what questions you have, I'm happy to move on.
Before we move on, I do have, someone did drop a question. You were talking about the trigger laws, and they said, isn't the Louisiana Constitution have privacy built in pretty strictly? So how is that trigger law constitutional?
With privacy, could you?
So
you read it?
the Louisiana Constitution has a pretty strict privacy built into it, is what they were suggesting. So how would that trigger law be constitutional in Louisiana?
I'm not sure what our Constitution says about privacy, but in 2019, also passed by Senator Katrina Jackson, a Democrat, the state put on the ballot and passed with like 60% of the vote a constitutional amendment that says there's no right to abortion in Louisiana. And they did that because I want to say it was Kansas or Kentucky, I think Kansas, a state Supreme Court there sort of bypassed a lot of the court cases and laws and found a constitutional right to abortion. I can't remember if it's on privacy or other grounds. Lamar, I see you shaking your head if you want to text me. I can't remember the basis, but Louisiana specifically, she filed that just in case that might happen. And I think just to be more aggressive, I mean, y'all know, we have almost 50 years of abortion legislation in Louisiana. We have more state laws about abortion than any other state. The laws are all over the place. They conflict. A lot of them don't make sense. And part of it is because every year, these far right electeds, they all have to file something to show how anti-choice they are. Sorry, I'm very much on point with my messaging. I refuse to say the word pro-life. They are very much anti-choice. They file something every year. For example, judicial bypass. So for those of you who don't know, judicial bypass up until a week or so ago was a right minors had in every single state that's been around for about 40 years, that a minor can get an abortion either if a parent or guardian signs off on it, or they can petition the court. And usually those cases involve a minor who lives with like their grandmother, or their parent might be incarcerated, or there's a similar situation, but often it's a minor who doesn't want to tell their parents, is afraid of being kicked out. The person who impregnated them might be a relative. There's a lot of cases that happens in, and so I and others have represented minors in that. And last year, Right to Life had this sneaky bill. It was supposed to be about collecting data, and at the very end of the process, completely improper process, and no one noticed it but Lyft and me probably, that gutted the ability to get judicial bypass in the state. And without going into the details, the amount of applications dropped by probably like 80 or 90%. And that's just an example of how aggressive Right to Life has been, how after they got the big abortion bills, the trigger ban and the constitutional amendment, that they've just been digging and digging and digging for every little thing that they can do to keep up with their power and their fundraising and to just cut off every avenue. And it's pretty shocking. I mean, I wish the left had a little bit of the discipline on messaging that they have, but that's kind of where we are on it. So the long answer to the short question is that our state constitution has like some like pretty, I would like to use the word violent, as other people before me have used violent provision directed towards people who are not in the majority in the state.
I think we got a message from Melissa Flournoy saying that Woody Jenkins wrote the privacy position in the state constitution, but in Louisiana it was not interpreted to support abortion rights.
Well, and Katrina Jackson made sure that was proper, and around 60% of voters agreed with her. As most of you know, also messaging on abortion polls is important. So if you just ask someone if they're pro-life or pro-choice, so many more will say pro-life.
Right.
If you start asking, what about this exception? What about this? What about first trimester? Fewer and fewer people, well, I guess I should say more people agree with the exceptions. So your numbers on who is 100% anti-choice is a lot lower than that ballot would suggest.
Okay. We've got a whole lot of questions, so maybe we can do sort of like a speed round on answers for these, Mandy, so that we can keep things moving. Senator Hewitt's bill for criminalization of medication abortion passed. Is that correct?
Yep.
And do you think that's because she wants to run for governor?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, I want to make one comment about Sharon Hewitt. Amy Freeman and I don't know if Amy's still on, but we worked with Lyft and we passed a bill 516 that it provides that public schools need to have some sort of guidelines in place for pregnant and parenting students to miss school and make up work if they have a doctor's appointment or if the kid has a doctor's appointment or if it breastfeed or the kid is sick. Like we need to be flexible to keep them in school. I think nationally only about 40% of parenting teens graduate from high school. It's probably less than that here. So Amy and I got that through the process, and Sharon Hewitt didn't vote for it in the Senate. Just want to give that little story to y'all. But her bill 388 passed, and it tries to forbid people in the state from ordering abortion pills from other states, and basically it forbids either ordering it from another state or shipping in here, I guess I should say, or a doctor in another state prescribing it here. And if you're shaking your head and wondering, how is that legal or constitutional? It's not. I mean, you can't, if I order a purse from New York, the state of Louisiana can't say this purse, you can't buy a purse from New York or stop it at the post office. So I think it's a BF law, and I think everyone knew it, but she passes what she wants. And some people tried to argue marijuana, said, isn't it true? Like, I can't order marijuana from Colorado to be shipped here. It's legal there and not here. Well, maybe not, but how are you going to stop it? I mean, it comes through the federal mail. So I think it's kind of nonsense, but it is kind of scaring people a little bit. But I still think that the abortion pill at this juncture is probably the best way to end a pregnancy in Louisiana, unless you can afford to go to another state. And yes, she's supposedly running for governor. And Jeff Landry's number 2, Liz Murrill, is supposedly running for attorney general, and everyone in this state needs to promise to knock on 5,000 doors for her opponents, because she alone has done so much harm to the state. She's usually the lawyer on the abortion cases to present a female face to promote Louisiana's laws or to oppose the other side. And so I think she's a more dangerous person in elected office than Sharon, actually.
So we'll revisit that next year, because that's when those elections are happening, and we got to get through 2022 first.
Yep.
We did
Sorry,
get,
let's do rapid fire.
should people be contacting our reps and senators asking for support exemptions for asking them to support exemptions for rape and incest? Should that happen now?
I mean, I would never tell anyone not to contact their elected officials. But I think starting now with individual messages is important, but you know, that is more useful closer to when we have a session. And as always, what I say is individual messages are better. Of course, you know, if all you can do is send in a form letter, that's fine. But the individual messages with your mailing address to your person or to a nearby elected is best.
Do you think there are realistic legislative options to keep abortions legal in Louisiana?
No.
Okay. And
no falsehoods here.
We're going to have the same people in the legislature in the next session. What do you anticipate happening on abortion next session? Will it get worse?
Well, I don't really know how it could get much worse, frankly. I think they're going to have to clarify and clear up these laws. And now that this isn't theoretical, I think we're gonna have more lawyers and experts involved. I mean, it was actually the governor who said when he was signing 342 or one of those that this has always been largely theoretical, and so people just pass stuff because it's politically popular. But I think and I've talked to a few of my moderate colleagues, and they think that an exception and other exceptions might be possible. Maybe there might be some clarity on the abortion pill bill, what can actually be done. But I don't want to sell false promises here, but now that Roe has been overturned, I think there's a little more clarity on what people are actually okay with doing to women and pregnant people.
We've got a question, even though the New Orleans DA has indicated he won't prioritize prosecuting people for abortion, can the Attorney General still swoop in and take over local cases like that?
I think the answer is yes, sort of. Because I've been looking at it and a bunch of us have been looking at it. The AG does have some room and some authority to step into local cases. And if any lawyers on here want to text me or message me if they've looked at it, I'm happy to hear it. It's not so easy that he can just step in and do it. There is some wiggle room for him to do that. This past year, there was a bill that would very specifically have expanded that power. And it was very weird when we saw it, and it was clearly, to me, directed at Orleans Parish for various reasons. I wonder if they're going to try to bring that back. It would probably be a constitutional amendment because the AG's powers are listed in the Constitution. But regardless of whether he can do it, he'll try.
Okay.
He'll certainly try.
Just want to note that Spell and Spell Law Firm has joined the Fair Fight Initiative and will provide criminal defense services at no cost to individuals charged criminally as a result of Dobbs. And other firms in the states are joining that. So that's something that people can be aware of. We'll try to answer some of these questions in an email following. Because there are a lot of questions, like I've got one here, like where can we read the full Constitution? We'll just send links out for stuff like this and make sure that it's available to you.
I can send it if you want me to.
We'll put it in email, sure.
Okay.
Trying to just roll through these real quick.
I'm also, y'all, if anyone gets my emails or if you don't, you can go to my website. I'm sending out a more substantial one tomorrow with a lot of the stuff Dion talked about and some of the stuff we've talked about. So you can get that tomorrow or go sign up tonight, and I post it on social media.
Let's see. So I've got a couple questions about should we be working on, sorry, the things are coming in so fast. Should we be working on legislation to codify contraception, rights to contraception, or working on legislation to strengthen telemedicine?
Yes. So I'll start with telemedicine. That a lot of that has been strengthened statewide and federally since COVID. I think now that they see that you can go around it for abortion and other issues, there's going to be a fight on it. The weird thing is though, like, it's so much more affordable and it really helps our rural areas in the state. So I'm not sure how that would go from that perspective. Now, birth control and emergency contraceptive, there's some language in it in Katrina Jackson's trigger ban about how the trigger ban doesn't affect those things. However, the bill or the law now very specifically creates legal personhood in Louisiana. And that says that when sperm meets egg, that's a legal person, which is a horrible legal precedent and terrifying. I mean, can you get life insurance on a 5-day-old embryo? What about child support? Do homicide statutes kick in? It would make IVF almost impossible. It's a horrible concept, but legal personhood would potentially affect IVF, emergency contraceptive, and even IUDs, because in all those situations, you'll have a fertilized egg that hasn't implanted yet. So I think we need to work on the legal personhood side. And I think we definitely need to clarify further emergency contraception, in particular in birth control. I also agree with national commentators that are concerned that future Supreme Court opinions will allow for states to regulate birth control and, marriage equality and voting rights and that sort of thing. So you're right to be concerned about that.
So Mandy, I just want to mention that folks should follow you on social media at Vote Landry, because we're getting more questions than I can even read at this pace. So what I would invite people to do is engage with you there, because you do answer questions frequently, particularly on Instagram, I think you go on video a lot and try to answer questions you're getting from folks in the state. You tend to be, they're less than 10% of our entire legislature is pro-choice. In a state where
Probably,
in
yeah.
a state where only 22% believe abortion, this is from my article in the Body Brief, in a state where only 22% believe abortion should be banned with no exceptions. That's from the LSU poll. Currently, there are no pro-choice women in our Senate. Mandy is actually running to be the sole pro-choice woman in our Senate. So I just wanted to mention that. But the polling at LSU that LSU did showed that attitudes in our state are shifting. While the GOP folks that they interviewed, their attitudes stay the same, Democratic attitudes have shifted dramatically, and that is not reflected in our legislature, the people that represent us in Baton Rouge.
No, I think it is personally, and that's why I think some of this might get better. A lot of them are a lot more moderate than we think, but the extreme political pressure from Right to Life and Family Forum is real, is very real. And I think they're like hearing from people on the other side when the IVF stuff was, when IVF was on the chopping block, whoa, we had some mad people, and that's because they're wealthy white people. And they were mad about it. So I think that's actually a group we need to engage. And I've been having some thoughts on it, if anyone else does, that people who have children by IVF need to understand very clearly that their ability to have those children is the reverse of someone not being able or not wanting to have a child. And they have to understand that deeply. And that is mostly older, wealthier white people. So let's think about, getting those people engaged. They have a lot of political power, especially like across the lake and places, Metairie, places like that. And I think that's a good starting point. As Dion mentioned about talking to people and getting them involved, that's a good constituency to start with.
I think that's great. And Mandy, you mentioned this, and Amy Freeman was on briefly in the very beginning, but couldn't stay on. She did want us to mention that a new law to end the pink tax authored by State Rep Amy Freeman became effective on July 1st. It provides a state sales and use tax exemption for feminine hygiene products and diapers for personal use, and extends the effectiveness of optional local tax exemptions. And Amy is marking the occasion by partnering with the Junior League of New Orleans for a donation drive of feminine hygiene products and diapers, both adult and infant diapers, throughout the month of July. So if anyone's interested in donating, we'll send you this information as well. You can deliver them to the Junior League at 4319 Carondelet Street from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on every weekday. But that's another thing people can consider doing if they're not in New Orleans. They can consider those kind of donation drives for their for local groups.
Yeah, they're very needed. I think I saw Debbie Hollis on here. She runs the one in Shreveport. I mean, with the supply chain and COVID and inflation, diapers are really expensive, and our incomes haven't gone up. So definitely try to give to the diaper banks as much as you can. And now
and I am going to, once again, I'm going to share screen because I want to make sure people know your website they can go to. We'll put a link for this also in the follow-up email that we send to everybody. Is that on, Mandy? Can you see your screen site?
Yep,
Your website. So that's Mandy's website. I'm going to invite you, are going to start hearing my dogs because they're getting antsy. But you can learn more about Mandy and connect with her here, because she really is leading on this issue. And as someone, if Roe and abortion rights is something you care about on a legal or legislative level, Mandy's the person to get in touch with on that. Thank you, Mandy.
Linda, can I just say one thing actually about Dion and Women with a Vision?
Do it.
As a lot of you know, last year I worked with Women with a Vision for over a year on the sex work decriminalization bill. I learned so much. the legislature learned so much. It was probably the best advocacy group I ever worked with. They were so prepared. And while going through that, was also the realization that sex work and consent and assault and all those things are so intimately related with reproductive rights. I mean, you have here a consensual relationship between adults that's criminalized. And to me, that's, you know, what's gone on with abortion and birth control and everything is an extension of criminalizing people's personal choices that someone else might not like. And people don't like when I say, I'm like, yeah, because the man's not making money off it. But, you know, it's a control over money, just like, you know, reproductive rights are control over bodies. And Dion, I know, has been saying that for a long time, much more eloquently than me, but it is something that is now imprinted on me that I think it's important for people to think about and understand.
Okay, thanks, Mandy. Really appreciate it. And so I'm here to talk about the third piece of the puzzle. So let's go back to the screen share. Again, this Zoom is based on a piece I wrote for the Bayou Brief, which you can go read for a deeper dive and for links to polling showing just how high the protections offered by Roe rate with the American public and talking points you can use in your advocacy. It also includes a lot of really beautiful photos from different protests we've done over the years. I won't go into all the intro to the piece here because I want to focus more on actions you can take, but I'd like you to know that the opening of the article makes the connection between the anti-abortion movement and school segregation. And my conclusion that the anti-abortion cause is really a subsidiary of the lost cause. As I said in my preamble on this Zoom, this is about more than abortion rights. We're fighting simultaneously for individual freedom, personal privacy, human rights, and democracy. And while we need to have a longer conversation about building our movement, our infrastructure, and our power in the state, the emergency of this moment calls for us to invest in the Senate races of the 2022 midterms. So we're going to talk about that a little bit right now. Louisiana, I'm sorry to tell you, is not likely to be one of the seats we pick up this year. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want a good Democrat in every race. That doesn't mean we don't get out and vote for them, and honestly, vote for whichever Democrat you want, because we just need to get enough votes across the board to keep Kennedy under 50%. That'll spark a runoff. And if that happens, the eyes of the nation will be on Louisiana, will be the last race happening for this year. So everyone will be looking at us, and we can talk again at that time if that happens. Charlie Cook from Shreveport is the Cook from the Cook Political Report, so he might know a thing or two about Louisiana. The Cook Political Report rates Louisiana as an R+12 solid Republican state in that Senate race, basically saying any Democrat running against Kennedy would have a hard time. Similarly, efforts to add a second majority-minority district to our congressional delegation have stalled, likely leaving us with 5 Republican representatives and 1 Democratic representative. That situation continues. There's still people fighting to change that. We'll see. If that changes between now and us getting to vote, we'll revisit that as well. We do have some consequential races we know are happening in Louisiana this year, like the Public Service Commissioner races. There's 2 of them up. There's judges across the state, school board members across the state, where we see a lot of these QAnon conspiracy people running for those seats. And that's where we've got those CRT fights and the book banning that's going on. Police chiefs have so much impact over people's lives. And particularly in some of those spaces that some of the laws are coming down from the Supreme Court, the police chiefs can have some big control over that. So these are races we really ought to be looking at and considering every time we vote. There are other races that Supreme Court decisions will be important in, like DA races or the Attorney General next year, but those are in future years. These are the ones that are happening this year. But let's make sure we're supporting our local Democrats. And I'm going to always ask people to check their registration. You can check at iwillvote.com. You can update your registration by going there. But I'm going to talk to you about what strategically we need to do this year to halt the radical actions of this Supreme Court. At the federal level, we have to keep the House. I'm counting on Nancy Pelosi and the DCCC to do the work of that for the most part, because it's really hard to identify a handful of congressional races and know what the local politics is enough to impact them. Not impossible, it's just a little hard to do. We know the importance of this though, because if we get a Speaker McCarthy, or worse, a Speaker Scalise, or worse, some QAnon speaker, any of that is possible. We'll have endless hearings on Hunter Biden. We'll have an impeachment of Joe Biden for what, who knows, they'll find something. And they'll end the work of the January 6th committee, which, as we know, is really important work. There was an attempted coup at our last presidential election, and states are feverishly working to try to figure out a way to make legal what they tried to do illegally last time. We need some folks there to hold this crew accountable. So we need to keep that January 6th committee in place. But the Senate is really a place where we can have some impact. And we know there are a handful of races that we can focus on that can really make a difference. We need 2 more Senate seats in order to never have to think about Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema again. If we have 2 more pro-choice Democrats who are willing to adjust the filibuster and hopefully expand the Supreme Court, we can do a lot. We can pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We might be able to get DC as a 51st state. And we can codify Roe. All of those things are really important, and of course, really important to the conversation that we're having right now. We do not want to give authority over Supreme Court justices back to Mitch McConnell. We've seen what he does with that power. We don't want to go there. So right now, I can tell you that these are 4 Senate races that we're trying to hold. And if you look at these, you can see that there are a couple that are R+3, and they're considered toss-up. So we have a good chance of winning these, even though they would be considered Republican-ish states or Republican-leaning states. So think of the difference between that, like an R+3, and we're all the way at R+12 in Louisiana. So these are some races that we can really give some time and energy to. You've got the Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. That's considered a fairly evenly split state, Nevada is, so that's a toss-up. Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire is leaning D, but they see that as a little bit of a threatened race, so they're asking for people to support her. Most of us know the astronaut Mark Kelly and the Reverend Raphael Warnock. They're favorites. They really should be able to win again, but could use extra help. So we need a net 2. So we need to keep those 4 races we just looked at and get 2 of these. If we lose any of those 4 races, then we obviously have to get more of these. But these are harder races. So those first 4 races are kind of important to keep. Among these 5, we just need 2. And you look at Florida, Val Demings is running against Marco Rubio. That's a tough race, but she's a good candidate. And the demographics of Florida are such that you never can tell. You could get a Democrat elected there. North Carolina, Sherry Beasley is running for an open seat. And so you see the things about a lot of these are they're open seats, which means they're not running against an incumbent, which makes it a little easier to win. The Ohio open seat looks more likely Republican, but Tim Ryan's a really strong candidate. And his opponent is not that great. It's that Trump-backed guy, JD Vance, I want to say is his name. So he's just a likely candidate to win with a little extra help. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania is running against another one of those Trump candidates, and that's a little bit closer. That's an R+2. That's considered a toss-up. So that's a really good seat to invest in. We don't know who the nominee in Wisconsin is going to be yet. That primary is not until August, early August. So for now, if you're interested in working in the Wisconsin race, I would recommend going to the Wisconsin Democratic Party. to volunteer for them or donate to them. And what I'll say about the Wisconsin Democratic Party is, by my estimation, they're probably the best Democratic Party in the country. They're headed by Ben Wickler, who used to run Move On. And he is just an organizer at heart. He comes from an activist background. He knows how to get things done. They did an amazing job in 2020. So I can highly recommend them as a Democratic Party that's worth investing in. So I've listed all of this information out in that Bayou Brief piece, and embedded in that piece is a document with more information on how to engage with all of these candidates. So I'm challenging you to do more this year. And my ask is that you choose a candidate or 2 or 3 that speak to you in some way. Do you like the astronaut? Do you relate to the Reverend? Did you go to college in Ohio? If there's one reason that you relate to one of these races or one of these states, just pick them and adopt them to be the race that you're working on this year. And there's several ways to contribute. You can volunteer, make phone calls, texts, write phone calls. Later, towards the end of the campaign season, you can travel out of state to do door knocks. You can donate. If you can make big donations, cool. If you can only donate $5 to $10 a month, candidates love knowing that they have money coming in consistently. They'll love that. But you can also do little fundraisers with just small groups of people. Even if you invite 5 people over and you each pitch in $10, that's now $50. That's $40 more than you might have been able to give yourself. So all of those kind of creative thinking ways to make sure you're contributing to each of these races are really helpful. And for volunteering, a lot of these campaigns will have online events for folks. If you live out of state, they may do like Zoom postcard writing parties, but you could host something like that yourself. And I'll note, we'll do a later Zoom with Liz Leger and talk about what she's doing with her group, but they've already, based on this article, they've already chosen the candidates that her and her group of folks want to work for, and they're going to make phone calls and they're going to write postcards, and later on they're going to travel to Georgia to knock doors for Senator Warnock. And then the last thing I'll talk about is amplifying their social media. If you don't have the time and you don't have the money to do any of the other things, you can always amplify social media for candidates. That itself is helpful. On Twitter, it's nice to be able to retweet them to get them a little more exposure. On Facebook or Instagram, you don't even have to share their posts. You can just go engage, like it, comment on it, let them know that you've signed up to volunteer or that you've just sent them some money, get other people engaged with them that way. And that really can help boost their messages just by the algorithms of those platforms. You're helping to boost them into other people's feeds, and that's really helpful. While we're talking about social media, I want to make a caution about media in general. Be on the lookout for disinformation, which is purposeful false information, or misinformation, which is a little more innocent in nature, but still sharing wrong information. We can't allow ourselves to go down rabbit holes and get drawn away from our mission with this kind of stuff this year. When you see something that looks wrong, ask yourself who the wrong info might benefit, and look only to trusted sources of information. Ask questions when you need to. If something doesn't look right, ask about it. Likewise, be on the lookout for chaos agents who seem like they should be allies, but somehow are out there spreading bad information. Don't let that distract you from your goals. Look out for infighting on the left, which can also pull you away from the mission. Sometimes candidates see that as a way to raise money or expand their email list or their following. But we can find ways to do that without damaging the mission. I understand the need to raise money and to get more followers on social media, but we don't have to be tearing each other down this year to do that. We need to keep our focus. We do not have the luxury this year of dividing ourselves. So let's go back to the article for a minute. I've got this document embedded in the article. so that it's just easier to go find information when you need it. You could bookmark this page rather than having to go find something in the article over and over again. And I've committed to updating this over the course of the year as things shift or as we get new information. So I've got the repro rights and justice stuff at the top, but I've also got the information from the article on the Senate races that we're talking about. And then for all the things I'm asking folks to do, I've got links to volunteer, to donate, and to follow on social media every single candidate we've talked about. So that just makes it really easy for you to access. Before we go, I got two quick things I want to share with you. They're both related. I am hosting a podcast for progressives called Louisiana Lefty that you can find on all the major podcast platforms, but you can also find me on the website louisianalefty.rocks. And the reason I say this is obviously because I'm talking about working for other states' senators this year. And I just do want to make clear that I am invested in building power in Louisiana. And we host this podcast so that folks can learn how to do things like organize, fundraise, just different kinds of actions that we're trying to teach people how to do. But more importantly, I'm hoping that folks will find different groups that they can connect with and network in the state. I've got transcripts for every episode so that you can look through them. We've got episode notes that tells you how to connect to folks. So please do check this out. We've been doing this for 3 seasons now, and I head into my 4th season this fall. And as part of that, there's a coordinated effort between Louisiana Lefty and the Bayou Brief, where we do an Organizer of the Month award. And we share that on social media, but we also have a gallery here on the Bayou Brief. We did this all last year, but we're doing it again this year. And everybody who gets an award gets a certificate in the mail, and you can learn about folks here as well. And you can connect with them on our social media because we always tell you how you can connect with these folks. So I hope you'll check out on the Bayou Brief at the very top, you'll be able to find Organizer of the Month as the heading and louisianalefty.rocks. Check it out and let's build some power in Louisiana too. Thanks, everybody. Another way to engage that I'll invite you to do is, if you're interested, is joining this Victory for Louisiana Facebook group we have. It is a closed group specifically for organizing. We try to keep it specifically for actions that we're asking people to do, like this Zoom is a thing we invited people to, having texting opportunities, keep up with the January 6th committee here, election protection stuff. So we really try to keep this not just to share memes or information, but specifically for actions. And I'll invite you, if you'd like to join that, just certainly let me know. So I just want to say, this is a fight worth having. It's a fight we have to have. Democracy remains under active attack in the United States. We've got to keep the branches of government we have and expand the majority in the Senate. That's the only way we can push back against this radical Supreme Court and stop them from hurting more people. Are we all sometimes frustrated with the Democratic Party? Of course we are, but electing Democrats matters. Consider this. In state governments where the Democrats hold all the power, abortion rights are protected. And if the GOP takes back the House and the Senate, they've already told us they're going to try to pass a national abortion ban. The answer is not to give up, not to not vote, not to discourage others. The answer is to accomplish our goals this year and then continue to mobilize to pressure our elected Democrats to do the things we know need to get done. What are those things? Well, we need them to pass the Women's Health Protection Act codifying Roe. They've already done that in the House. We need it done in the Senate. So they've got to abolish or carve out the filibuster to do that. And then we've got to expand the Supreme Court so they can't overrule the Women's Health Protection Act. Expanding the Supreme Court is no longer a radical idea. Not doing that is allowing radicals to continue to run the court. So I just got this quote from Alexei Navalny, who is a Kremlin critic currently jailed by Vladimir Putin. And I just think it's a really important quote. This guy went back to his country to be jailed as an opponent to the most powerful guy in Russia, listen, I've got something very obvious to tell you. You're not allowed to give up. I think we should take inspiration from him. I think we should take inspiration from the Ukrainians who are fighting for their homeland. We can do this work, and we create our own hope through organizing. So we've got work to do, but we have the power of the people.